Welcome back, everybody. We are here for how state auditors use local government data. And I want to introduce our speakers who are going to give us a short presentation, and then we'll take audience questions. So please post your questions as they come up, as they occur to you, in using the Q&A link that you see on your screen, and then we'll address them at the end. Our first speaker today is Stacy Tellers. Stacy is an MSA CPA. She is the local government support manager at the Office of the Washington State Auditor. She has over 20 years of accounting and financial reporting experience, including over 15 years dedicated to government. She has extensive experience in the preparation of the annual comprehensive financial report, evaluating and implementing GASB standards for local government accounting and reporting, and reviewing state law as applicable to the accounting and reporting for governments. In her current role with the Office of the Washington State Auditor, one of Stacy's responsibilities is overseeing the team that supports the budgeting, accounting, and reporting system, also called BARS. She also oversees local government training, annual filing, and audits of nearly 600 local governments. Additionally, she's an educator of governmental accounting and strong advocate for accountability for government funds. She participates in several local, state, and national associations and committees. So with that, I'm very pleased to have Stacy with us today, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I am sharing. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending our session on how we collect and use local government data. As Michelle said, I'm Stacy. I am from the Washington State Auditor's Office, and I'm just going to delve right into what we do here. So here in Washington, we are governed by Washington state law as the state auditor's office to prescribe what is called the Budgeting, Accounting, and Reporting System Manual, aka BARS, and it is prescribed under state law 43.09.200. So let's talk a little bit about RCWs. So the state auditor lives in chapter 4309, and the two main sections that are applicable to our session today is .200 and .230. So 200 requires the office to create and maintain a uniform system of accounting and reporting, which we do through BARS, for all of our local governments except for schools. School districts are actually overseen by our Office of the Superintendent, and they prescribe their accounting and reporting. So the uniform application of our accounting and reporting prescription for local governments helps our state to be unique and for governments to be transparent. And the uniform application meets our next criteria, which is 230, to collect the data and prepare comparative statistics. So we are required to collect the summary financial data as we've prescribed through our annual report process in our annual filing system. Annual reports are required to be submitted within 150 days after a government's fiscal year close. And then we use that data not only to conduct the audits, but to meet that requirement to publish comparative statistics. So in Washington state, governments can choose two bases of accounting. They have the GAAP option and the cash option. GAAP, of course, is prescribed by the GASB, so our Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which is nationally recognized. Our GAAP manual conforms to that GASB prescription. Now, in our effort to do comparative statistics data reporting, we need to align as much as we can our cash basis accounting to GAAP prescription. So a lot of that comes across in things like liability reporting with bonds and pensions and the like, but we do carry very carefully GAAP requirements into cash. That comparative data gets compiled for us to publish. So again, this is why it's really important for us to keep these in a line. Now, a lot of people use our data. A lot of our state agencies use the data that's published. Federal grantors and several other organizations view the data. For example, our Washington State Department of Transportation, known as WashDOT, they use the filed information from our counties and our cities to produce their federal report on the expenditures and revenues related to transportation. Our Department of Commerce reviews the liability reporting because they verify that governments are not over their statutory requirements for debt issuance. We have a lot of granting agencies that ask a lot of questions about our data as they're evaluating the types of awards to give governments. And we do get a lot of questions from bond rating agencies as governments are going out for bond rating or issuance of new bonds. Our citizens review the data as well as the media. So we get lots of questions from them about what is reported. And of course, we use it to perform our audits. And most importantly, as required by the legislature for reporting, they use the data. They look at it as they're evaluating laws, new revenue streams, etc. So we are all about transparency here. So that data is all published on our website. Now, what exactly do we collect? We collect a lot of information. So regardless of whether a government is GAAP or cash, the requirements of what we collect is the same. So they're required to provide us a summary of their financial activity, and they do this through our BARS coding system, and it is prescribed by government type. We also collect liability information, so those bonds, amounts, leases, loans, pension, other post-employment benefits, a wide range of liability information is collected. Our system also collects the schedule of federal awards information, which we use for our single audits. And we also collect information on state awards. So we get a lot of grant, loan, and contribution information from both the federal and state sides. We also get special requests from our legislature to collect other financial data, such as we collect specialized sales tax information from the counties on how they're using a certain sales tax in their governments. We, of course, collect information specific to audit, such as a questionnaire that we have out there where governments provide us specific answers on internal control questions. They attach certain requirements related to the audit in that year to support their financial activity that we're going to be auditing. For this session, though, we really want to focus on the financial summary, and we do that through the BARS coding system. So we have 2,000 local governments that we collect financial data for. And we do this on their revenue, expenditures, and beginning and ending balances through this BARS coding structure that we've been developing for over 100 years. So to start, we created buckets. And we have buckets for the beginning and ending balances for fund balance, net position, or cash and investment, depending on the basis of accounting. Those codes start, the beginning balances are the 308 codes, and the ending balances are 508 codes. So we live in a coding structure for all of the local governments, all of their bases of accounting, and all of their types. We then created buckets for the traditional revenue streams. We have some GAAP-only required codes for those proprietary funds, some other increases and decreases, and then our expenditure streams. So our increased codes all start with 3s, and our decreased codes all start with a 5. Now, we have about 1,300 individual BARS codes, and we have funding codes, codes for fund types. We have tracking availability for the basis of accounting a government is and the type of accounting. So I really want to try to stay high level here because we could be here for hours talking about BARS codes. So let's focus on the revenue buckets for a minute. So in our chart of accounts, our increases section has buckets related to the stream or the source of a revenue. So for example, we have the 310 series, which is our taxes coding series. And in this BARS code, we have about 55 individual codes related to the types of taxes a government is allowed to levy and collect. We further go to the 320 series, which is the collection of license and permit revenues based on a government's activities. Of course, intergovernmental revenues is quite a large bucket. There's about 220 individual BARS codes in our intergovernmental 330 coding series. And that gives us all of the information of grants, awards, and other contributions that governments receive from the federal, state, and local levels. We also have a wide variety of codes for charges for goods and services. These are usually used throughout our utility funds for collections of like water charges, for example. Our additional coding series includes fines and penalties like late fees or public safety related fees that are collected, and they live in our 350 coding series. We have a coding series for what's called the miscellaneous bucket. It's the 360 series, which includes all of the revenue streams related to investment earnings, interest earnings, lease revenue, contract revenue, etc. Now, we do have our GAAP proprietary only funds, and we provided these codes for resources coming in to GAAP governments that have proprietary funds to help them with their special reporting requirements on their financial statements. So an example of that is capital contributions. Those capital contributions are required to be reported on a separate line on the financial statements. So we provided a series of codes so governments could easily track that revenue. And then finally, we have the 390 and 380 series. We call this the other increases series. This is where governments report their proceeds from the issuance of debt or transfers into funds. And there's specific codes for each type of activity within these coding series. Now, much like our increases, we have a decrease series. Now, the difference in our decreases is these are based on the function of government as opposed to the source, which the revenues are, the source of revenue. We created these based on the most common reasons why governments are created and established in Washington state. So we have our general government, which is generally our cities and counties, and it's the administrative functions of those governments are in the 510 coding series. We have the functions of public safety, utilities, transportation, natural and economic environment, social services, and culture and recreation. You'll note that we do not have public education, and that again is because our Office of the Superintendent prescribes the coding for the school districts. We do, should we be given that authority, we would then create a coding series specific to that function of government. The 580 and 590 series is those other decrease codes. So we track the debt payments, and we even break that down by the type of debt, and our capital expenditure codes to help track those for governments, as well as just some other miscellaneous codes that live there. So transfers in, transfers out of funds and custodial type disbursements live there. We have about 600 expenditure and decrease codes, so we can get pretty detailed in our coding. So here's an example. So very detailed, we need to be able to tell the story of the resource that's coming in or the expenditure that is going out. So at this time, the revenue and expenditure codes are 7 digits. And some of our codes require only the first 3 digits. Some of our codes require use of all 7 by the local governments. So for example, a story that we have is federal awards. And we code all the way out from, is it a direct award, an indirect award, and what department of the federal government is providing the award. So in this example that is on the screen, we're going to look at a tax code. So each of these tell a story. The story is the first 3 is an increase. So we're looking at a revenue stream that's coming in. The second digit, the 1, is a tax. The third digit, a 3, is a sales and use tax allowed to be levied by the local government. Now in this code, we only use the 4th and 5th digits, which is 11 or 11. And in our chart of accounts, that tells somebody that this is a sales and use tax at the local level. It's not the state level tax. Should we be required to report additional detail of this code, maybe a specific industry that's collecting the sales and use tax, we would also then prescribe the final 2 digits. We would use the 00 digits and put more information in there. So 1,300 bars codes get reported to us in our annual reporting system. And they provide the summary detail information within this reporting system. So our system is made up of modules. And the step that we're looking at here is what we call the Schedule 01. It's the revenue and expenditure module. Here, governments take all of their summary data using the BARS codes to report to us those beginning and ending balances, their revenue streams, and their expenditure streams. We can get this in via manual entry, which we recommend for governments that have very little activity, or through an Excel template that we've created that we recommend for governments that have significant activity. So we do have governments who only report a couple of lines of data. We have governments that report tens of thousands of lines of data into this system. Once it's uploaded into our system, a government can check that their codes are valid. They can check for variances. They can also check for other errors. And then they can easily correct that information within the system. They can then download and save reports from each step within the system. So here's an example of the Excel template. We create a template for nearly every government type. The only two government types that don't get a template are our cities and counties. And that is because they have access to every single BARS code. We provide templates for fire districts, for example, and we provide them with just the BARS codes available to them to make it a little bit easier for them to do their reporting. For our cash basis governments, our filing system produces a schedule called the Fund Resources and Uses arising from cash transactions. This schedule summarizes the data that they have sent us, and then the government will utilize this schedule for their audit, and it ultimately becomes their official financial statement that gets published in our audit report. Now, GAAP governments, of course, prepare their own financial statements. However, all of that summary financial data is still uploaded into our system, and we produce the comparative statistics in the same manner and layout as our cash reporting. So a publication of our comparative statistics is done every year, and it's updated every 3 months throughout the year. And it is required by state law that we do this. So we publish this through our financial intelligence tool, or FIT, and it is available on our SAO website, absolutely open to the public and anybody who visits our website. So this tool is interactive, and it provides several pre-built searches and reports for users. So for example, we have several reports that are pre-built on the top research questions that people have, such as, where are public dollars going? How is my government funded? How much is spent on debt? And so much more. We also have interactive tools based on specific government types. We were really excited to launch recently a report tool for schools. We worked really closely with our superintendent of public instruction to obtain this data and get it organized so that we can provide the same sort of comparative tools that we have for our other governments. And we have pre-built ones for counties and cities. They are the largest in our state, and the information that we collect is very useful, and it's searched a lot. So we provided some pre-built reporting tools just for those gov types. Now, one of the great things about FIT is it is very interactive. You can get into a specific government and you can drill into their financial data, and you can compare it to their other, like if it's a county, to another county. And they do all of this from the filed BARS codes and the financial summaries that they provide to us. So it's a really quick trip into BARS and to FIT. Again, we could spend hours and hours talking about it. So if you were ever interested, you can visit our website at sao.wa.gov. There's 2 drop-down menus. I'd point you to the reports and data where FIT lives, and the BARS and annual filing menu where everything related to BARS and BARS codings live. And you can find me in the lobby chat if you need me or have any questions, but here's also my contact information. And I believe I'm going to pass it over to Bob. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Stacy, thanks so much. We're going to bring Bob up right now, and we're going to take a look at his slides. So stick around, Stacy, because we'll have questions at the end.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And we'll say thanks to Michelle and Mark and Christine for the opportunity to participate today and represent the State Auditor's Office in Ohio in GovFin 2025. Just some real quick background on the State Auditor's Office in Ohio. Our elected state auditor, he's one of 5 independently elected state office holders, elected for a 4-year term, can be the auditor for up to 2 terms. Our current auditor is Keith Faber, and I am the chief deputy auditor for the auditor's office. Next slide, Michelle, please. The state auditor's office in Ohio is one of the largest state auditor's office in the United States. Got over 800 employees, about 600 plus of those are auditors. We have very broad audit authority in the state. We audit over 5,900 entities, state and local governments, and that ranges from we complete the audit of the state ACFR and the single audit for Ohio, down to some really small local governments and special purpose governments. An example being, I mean, there are cemeteries, cemetery districts, cemeteries in Ohio that have budgets of less than $10,000 on an annual basis that are required to undergo some type of audit, at least on a biannual cycle. We issue over 4,000 reports approximately in a year's time, including full GAGAS financial and compliance audits, agreed upon procedures, what we would refer to as statutorily driven basic engagements for those very small entities. We do consulting reports, performance audits, and then we also have a special audit division that does forensic work. Unfortunately, too much of that, I would tell you, in Ohio. Our authority and duties are primarily prescribed in Chapter 117 of the Ohio Revised Code. Next slide, please, Michelle. So, before we can utilize the data as a state agency, we have to be able to collect it. This is a section of Code 11738 that requires annual reports. Each public office has to file with us on an annual basis. There are a number of them that file gap statements, but the majority of our clients file either cash or modified cash or some type of OCBOA statement. So we have different basis of accounting depending on the type and size of entity. Next slide, please, Michelle. So here is our picture of our web page. Again, a number of jokes might be appropriate this juncture. I will save you all of them except for one, and that is, it is an honor to have the system named after me. But all it did was make Hinkle a bad word in certain circles, and I'm sure that all of you understand that. For years, we received information on all kinds of different mediums. So we got it in paper, we got it on floppy disk, we got it in email, we got it in photocopies of general ledgers, all kind of filing, and so it caused a lot of issues for us, both at time of audit, but also in our responsibilities of accumulating the data and sharing it, and also any analysis that we wanted to perform. So in 2016, after a time of pushing for it to occur, we stood up the Hinkle system for the filing of annual financial reports from all of our entities. Next slide, please, Michelle. So if you want to click again, Michelle, I'm sorry. So the Hinkle, the annual financial data reporting system, is an application developed by the Auditor State's office, to facilitate filing of the annual financial statements, and includes debt, demographic information as well. And as you'll see as I go forward, it doesn't collect the entire basic financial statements or an ACFR, for instance, but we obtain the information through a data entry system, so that we can perform the responsibilities of our job. It used to take us months to assimilate this data, to get it to the legislature for their use or for any public consumption. And now through the Hinkle system, we can do that in certainly in less than a week's time. We gather 734 different data points from each of those entities. And examples of those are, we gather, so the statement of net position, we gather governmental activities. We aren't currently gathering the business type activities, but you'll see, but we do collect the information for water funds, sewer funds, electric, and landfill, which in Ohio, those are the primary proprietary funds and information that we need to share with the legislature as our reporting responsibilities. And then we also, as I mentioned, we collect the debt information, general fund debt information, and also some other demographic information through the Hinkle system. Another system that want to talk about is the uniform accounting network. It's a system that it's an Auditor State generated software package that we make available to our smallest units of government. In Ohio, there are 1,308 townships, and approximately 90% of them use the Uniform Accounting Network for their accounting system throughout the year. 700 villages, about 70% of them use this system. In total, we have over 2,100 users of the Uniform Accounting Network. And what this system allows them to do, because they're limited in resources, limited in sometimes the professional skills needed for financial reporting, they have the option. They can opt into a really push the button, excuse me, and their information is transferred right from the Uniform Accounting Network into the Hinkle reporting system, so that their financial statements can be filed through a file transfer function at that level. So we gather either through data entry or through transfer from our own Uniform Accounting Network into the Hinkle system is how we currently gather the information. Next slide, please, Michelle. So how do we use the data? Well, it's the starting point, first of all, for all of our annual and biannual audits that we perform our agreed upon procedures and every other engagement. The process used to be much less efficient when we would obtain that information as we arrived at a client site, asked for their financial statements to start an audit. The other thing that it allowed for is we had issues with version control. Again, in Ohio, all the governments operate on a cash basis, and those that are required to report on GAAP do a conversion at year end. Well, that conversion process, again, they have 5 months to file those GAAP statements, and so we would be, trying to get we have audit goals of completing, having audited financial statements available to the public within 6 months. At the 5 month point in time, we're still receiving modified financial statements prior to implementing the Hinkle system. Now, what they file as of the due date is what is utilized for audit, and then audit adjustments are made to those statements, posted to the Hinkle system, so that the final audited financial statements come right out of our system and are generated there. The other thing we use that information for is the financial data. It rolls directly into what we refer to as our financial health indicators for cities, counties, and school districts, and I'll cover that in a little bit more detail here in a few slides. We also have the financial data by entity type that the Hinkle system rolls it directly into for the statutorily required reports that we have to make available to the legislature on a real-time basis. So now they've got information. Again, in prior to this system, we were getting those reports to them 6-8 months late, and now we're able to again, within a week's time of having a filing deadline, they've got that information they've got available, and they can use it for decision-making processes. And then the financial data is also posted online for constituents' consumption. And again, the assimilation of that is so much more efficient and accurate as we make that information available to the public. Next slide, please, Michelle. So I referred to financial health indicators earlier. One of the uses that we have of the information is we do financial health indicators for counties, cities, and school districts. These financial health indicators occur at 2 times in their financial statement life. At the time they file in the Hinkle system, the financial health indicators are automatically generated. And then at the time of audit, after audit adjustments are posted, a final financial health indicators gets posted. The entity has, each city, each county has 14 days after those audited financial statements are filed to review them and to be, to be knowledgeable of them. And then they're made available to the public, and they are consumed. These financial health indicators are utilized by the public, and especially by the the press often will inquire about them. And what we're trying to do here is just generate discussion around an entity that may be moving towards some type of fiscal distress. In Ohio, there's fiscal caution, watch, and emergency. And what we want to do is try to alleviate any of these from getting into a fiscal distress situation where they're in watch or emergency, where there's a state commission in place to help them oversee their operations. There's 17 indicators in the financial health indicators. Some examples, unrestricted net assets, or looking at the position of the governmental type activities over a 4-year period. What's the trend? Unassigned fund balance in the general fund. What's the 4-year trend for that? Total general fund balance compared to general fund revenues, the ratio, change in property tax revenue, change in income tax revenue. Those are all indicators within this, and so they're evaluated if they have they're on a green, yellow, and red system. As far as green obviously is go, yellow is caution, and red is there's some fiscal concern there. And if they receive so many red and yellow indicators, then they automatically receive a call from our consulting division to see if they need assistance in evaluating their financial statements and the decisions they may be making. So this right here, what's up on the screen is just was an example of the cities at a preliminary time. This current slide that's up is our schools for 24, June 30 of 24, and these would be final. The audits are complete on these, and they would be final evaluations that have been made for those schools and where they are at in each of the indicators. Each entity receives a a report on all 17 or if you're cash basis, you receive 15 indicators and an example or an explanation of where you're at, what your trend is, and then to help them in evaluating where they're at. Next slide, please, Michelle. This next slide again it's going to be hard to read, but it's really a partial list of an example of financial information made available to the public as it's filed with the Auditor State's office. And again, we know at this time we are looking to expand our Hinkle filing system. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it currently collects 734 data points. And if you think of an aquifer the size of the city of Columbus, Ohio, they would there's probably 10,000 or more data points within there. I've heard it said that it could go much higher than that in some aquifers. So we know that we are only collecting a portion of the information, but even what we're collecting in a standardized format becomes very useful for us. So what are we looking for the future? And again, if we go ahead, Michelle, you can go to that last slide that I have there, which is an example of, this is a report that we would be available for. This is just one page of a report that's available to the legislature and to the public, listing each city and the types of revenue that they receive and the amounts, so that again, interested legislature or constituents can see. The future state for where we're at is, I've been talking with Mark and Michelle Campbell and others on the potential of, first of all, we'd like to, instead of having a data entry system, we're working towards a writing schema so we can take uploads of financial statements to eliminate data entry error, and also the time that's involved with that for each of our local government clients as they enter the information into our system. And then the other what we, beyond the data entry, then we want to be able to through, hopefully, instead of in Ohio 5,900 plus local governments potentially looking for a solution to make their financial statements machine readable, we'd like to be able to do that at the state auditor's office. And so we're working. Secondly, we're working on expanding and looking for a solution so that once we have audited numbers through our system, that they can be utilized by those local governments in their reporting requirements. Certainly, we play a part in addressing, the single audit reporting and the requirements that have been issued, although not in effect, for the GREAT Act, and then also the Financial Data Transparency Act. And again, we have a number of clients that are in the municipal market, and giving them a solution, hopefully, so that their information comes out of our system and is usable for reporting at that level. I think with that, Michelle, I think we'll open it up for any questions.
Great, Bob, thank you. And I apologize. I'd like to give a little run through of your bio, which I neglected to do at the start. And I just want to mention that, obviously, Bob noted that he is Chief Deputy Officer for the Ohio Auditor of State. Bob started in September of 1984 as the staff auditor and was promoted through the ranks until his eventual appointment to Chief Deputy Officer today. Bob has received the Hugh Dorian Lifetime Achievement Award from the Ohio GFOA, Central Ohio AGA, the Excellence in Government Leadership Award from the Central Ohio AGA, and the Champion of Public Education Award from the Ohio Association of School Business Officers. And he's also been nationally recognized by the National Intergovernmental Audit Forum, receiving the David M. Walker Excellence in Government Performance and Accountability Award. And David Walker is actually our keynote today, later on. And I also want to mention that Bob alluded to it in his presentation, but he is also the individual who envisioned the Hinkle system, and hence the name Hinkle system. So thank you very much for all of the work that you did on that. So anyway, apologies for bringing that at the last minute, but I just want to make sure that our audience was aware of who you are, if they don't already. But with that, I do want to go to questions, and I think we'll bring Stacy back in, and I'm going to stop sharing, and we do have some audience questions. And I also want to encourage people to, go ahead and post additional questions as they come up to you. So the first question is actually for Stacy, and the question is: Washington's standardized reporting has clear benefits for in-state comparisons. From your perspective, what opportunities would broader adoption of a standardized reporting taxonomy create for nationwide benchmarking and policy analysis?
So I will start off with, this is not the state auditor's view, because we continue to just monitor the rulemaking process with the FDTA, and therefore the office is not committed to any comments on the impact to FDTA to our local government collection process. However, if you go out to the SEC's website and look at our comment letter, we very much talk about how standardized processing with our uniform system of accounting and reporting, like the standardization of that makes it so much easier to consume data. And so personally, I do feel like some sort of standardized reporting process would be extremely valuable on a national level. And I feel like the FDTA is going to bring us there. I do know it will just be a long road to get there. In my presentation, I said we've been doing this for over 100 years, and it's taken that long to get to where we're at today. So it'll be interesting, but I do think that there is value.
Okay, great, thank you. And a question for Bob about the data that you collect through the system. You're collecting like a subset of the ACFR, is that correct? And the ACFR contains like additional information, but you're collecting around 700 data points. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So actually, it could be the max that an entity would have to enter would be 734 data points
Okay.
if they hit everything in that we ask for. So
Okay.
yeah, we're just a very small, what I believe is a very small subset. I mean, at the time of the standing up the Hinkle system, it was what we needed for reports to the legislature, for what we first saw as these financial health indicators that we had experimented with, for some time. And so that's when we were doing ourselves and to get something in place. We did the 734. I think my thought is, as we walk through this process and there is a taxonomy that's adopted, I think that's where we should go as an office, because we also don't have standard charts of accounts for all entities in Ohio. School districts do, but our counties, cities, our municipalities do not. And so we do have issues in that area. We have the ability, I mean, as a state auditor, we have the ability to make that requirement. We have to. There's political capital gets spent in doing that, and so there's getting support for it has at this point not occurred.
So you would see if you were able to, you would collect more data out of the ACFR if it was
absolutely
challenging.
So in addition to those 734 data entry points, we also have there's an upload function for the entire PDF document. So we're still that PDF document still is utilized, but we have a data integrity unit that they utilize information there. Unfortunately, and again, they scrape it so we're advancing in that area as well. But just the collection of it through an upload function, I think, is going to make. We have the schemas written to do that. Again, we've got some rulemaking that we'll have to make some changes to, and we're also starting to reach out to some of the software vendors in Ohio to see if those major players if we can interest them in working with us in that area.
Right. That was kind of my other question is like, who else uses like the PDFs of the ACFRs? You're saying that you're scraping some of the data out of them and you have like the 700 point data points are the most critical ones, but then you're scraping data out of the others to use the rest of the report to use that for other purposes. So I assume that's kind of less critical information. And are there other people using those PDF files?
I would say I don't think I think they get underutilized, if anything. Again, unfortunately, the process in Ohio with the conversion process is often a government will hire a consultant to assist in the converting of the financial statements. And instead of those gap statements, instead of being used as a management tool, it ends up a book sitting on a shelf someplace, and it doesn't get nearly the use even at the local level that it should. And then there's not a real good distribution mechanism for those either. So that they again, if you are in the if you are the city of Columbus, whole different story, very advanced. Megan Kilgore and the work they do at City of Columbus, their audited financial statements are on the street 90 days after the end of the fiscal period, because again, they have a process to prepare them much more timely. And then again, the team up with either the audit firm or the auditor state's office, and getting those audited and on the street, and they're very useful and are used by management at the city. It just doesn't happen that way in enough instances from my perspective.
Right, and that's why you're offering sort of the low cost solution for some of the smaller entities, so they can just use an off the shelf or a government provided tool to provide information.
Exactly.
Okay. And Stacy, the data that you are collecting through bars, is most of that data also in the ACFR, or is that it has additional information?
It's more detailed than what would be in the ACFR. It actually provides summary for each fund that a government might have. It reports all the different levels of the type of revenue and expenditure. So it doesn't just give the sum up number that is reported on the face of the financials. And in the ACFRs, it's a consolidation of all of that reporting. Well, we will get all, for example, 80 funds that a government has with their detailed revenue expenditures. And even in the expenditure side, we have the natural classifications. So we can even delve into the data that's related to payroll, for example. How much is payroll expenditure? How much is benefits? How much are services that a government's paying for? So it's a more detailed level of the fiscal data than what is on the face of the financial statements. But we also collect in our system the PDF of the financial statements and the ACFRs for the gap governments, and those get utilized in the kickoff of our audit. And part of that ACFR is what's published in the audit reports that are also on our website.
Okay, great. And then so the PDFs, you guys use those for the audits. Are they used by other organizations? And the bars data, that's all made publicly available, correct?
Yeah, everything that we collect for revenues and expenditures and the beginning and ending balances is available on the website. Governments themselves can log into their data, both in the annual filing system and review what they filed, but within FIT, and they can see additional information that's not currently publicly available and do comparisons. The PDFs that are attached to the filing, those are not publicly available since we only publish the final audited version. And then of course the governments post those on their websites.
Okay, great. Kind of a question for both of you. What do you see with the Financial Data Transparency Act, which is still, kind of a work in progress right now. And as you heard from Dave Sanchez, it may be a little bit more delayed going forward. What do you see as would be the most positive outcome of the FDTA? Would it be moving forward with, every government reporting? Would it be like, what would you see as an ideal outcome that would meet the needs of the legislators, the regulators, the users of the data, but also the local governments who have it's kind of a big balancing act in the whole process?
I think the biggest part is just the ease of access to the data. That's what we see here. We get lots of questions and have gotten lots of questions. So with our FIT tool, directing people to that, and they can get what they are needing. And they develop additional questions, which then they do need to go to the government themselves to ask, as we don't own the data. So if they had questions about, well, why did that increase? We wouldn't necessarily have the answer to that. So I do think that the first initial impact is just the ease of getting the data and to be able to look at it, maybe even compare it to other governments and just sum up, especially with policy decisions. Who needs money where and what are we spending money on? And getting that across the country would be very beneficial, I feel, to the federal government.
Okay. I mean, would
Yeah.
you see, oh, go ahead, Bob.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, I mean, I would echo what Stacy said. In Ohio, it would also help with comparability once this taxonomy is settled upon, and then I believe by rule, we would apply it and adopt it to different types of entities, especially our gap reporting entities, so that they then there's a much more consistent structure of those statements and then use of data, and then on the performance audit front, that comparability and being able to grab information, as you referred to earlier, from other states and know that I'm grabbing the same information will make it's ease of availability, ease of use, and then comparability I think will be some of the things that will certainly it will help with. And then the reporting piece of it, I think all those things will certainly be affected once it's in place and operating.
Yeah, we have some audience questions, but one of the issues that has been raised many times, and I think this is a common question that comes up with some implementation like this that's fairly broad-based, is cost. Is cost to the state and to the local governments. What do you see as how could regulators kind of help alleviate some of those costs, and how can states potentially help their local governments deal with the potential costs? And do you think that's a huge, a big impediment, or maybe not as significant as some people are saying?
Yeah, Stacey, I'll go first on this one if that's okay. Michelle, I know because the call recent call we had. I mean, and again, from my perspective, and again, this will be Bob Hinkle and not necessarily the auditor's office in Ohio, because we've not decided to go that way yet. Is I do think that if there's a solution that we can apply at the state auditor's level, because we have the financial information for all of these entities, if it can be tagged, made machine readable at the end of the process, or within the process of coming to the auditor's office, I think we should do that to assist our local governments, instead of their having to, again, I think as from a resources standpoint, although I believe the costs will continue to come down in this area. We saw some great demonstrations earlier this morning of software packages and what they can do now. I think that's only going to continue to advance. But I do think that it's going to be difficult for those smaller units of local government to get to a solution, and so I think we should assist them with that.
Yeah, that I agree that it depends on the size of the government. It's right now expensive for them to even transition to a new financial system. So there's always that cost burden and that cost concern. This is where we have not made a choice or a decision. It's not even in a conversation yet till we get the final rules. What would we do? What would we change in our system, if anything? We know what it costs for us to maintain our system, to train and educate and provide support through the filing system and during the filing process. So I can just see the cost being a factor, and it'll be very interesting to see. I echo to while we saw the examples, it's exciting to see the technology and think about what we can do with that technology. So it's kind of a wait and see game.
Makes sense, makes sense. So we have another question here. Do you see a significant difference between information, data points that investors are interested in as part of a taxonomy versus information for state regulation of municipal entities? I think that's just for both of you.
Yes, there are areas that we see that are required for the rating agencies. They ask for different information than what we collect in our filing system. So just from our side of the table with what we currently are required to collect with what is being looked at for issuance of debt, just that alone. There are different data points. And it's just because we've never been asked to collect that by our legislature, and it's not a comparative, some of those things are not comparative between GAAP and cash. So I do see some differences in what we collect and what other people are needing.
And again, I would echo the answer. I believe there's a difference. Again, a lot of what we collect is compliance driven, and legislative, a legislative request, and not so much from the investment direction. And so, I think that a lot of the information we collect and make available answers a number of those investment questions. It probably is not addressing all of them.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're coming up at the close of our session. I just want to, are there any parting comments you have or words of wisdom to the local governments out there and state governments?
I have thoughts. We say don't panic. Just everybody stay calm and stay plugged in and stay informed, because it's really hard to see the future and we don't have a crystal ball. So to just stay informed, that is the number one thing right now.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of moving parts still, and I think that we're all going to need to have some patience. And I believe, there's still if I understand it correctly, there's still a 2-year window from the time that they settle on taxonomy to then get things put in place. And so I think that there's certainly time for that to take place.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you both. This has been really great and really interesting to see how 2 different states work, doing essentially a lot of the same things, and great to share ideas. So we'd love to work with both of you on potential pilots going forward over the next few years. So we'll be back in touch on that. But in the meantime, thank you so much. And please join us for the rest of the conference. And I would say everybody give a round of applause here, but we can't do that on a virtual basis. So thank you again.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Stacy.
Thanks, Bob.